Okay, the next presenter is Fitri Rahmatillah. Fitri, the time is yours.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm going to talk about language and identities. The speaker is Michael Bayram in University of Durham, United Kingdom. He is Professor Emeritus. Okay, in the first part, Michael Byram starts with introduction about the topic, a causal relationship between language learning and identity. Language is the key to knowing other people. Learning and identity language help to build up the feeling of being European with all its cultural wealth and diversity, understanding between the citizens of Europe. Build up the feeling of being European means cause effect. Number one is being proficient in language will cause a sense of being European or native. This is evidence. He stated David Block in his survey, Effect of Language Learning on Identity. Relationship between language learning and identity can find only two or three pieces. He concluded that language learning in the foreign language classroom will affect learners' identities. He said that I would love to be French, but I can never be French because you have to be born French. It is means language learning makes you a European. You can say you are European or native unless you're actually born in English or European. It is also called ethnicity theory. Number two is physical appearance means of constructing a social identity. And next is another statement from Michael Byram as social identity theory or competition among groups. Number one is identification with group. An example is I am an X. Number two is they are identified and accepted by others in the group. You are one of us. We are X. Sometimes they are rejected by people in a group. Number three is people from other groups identify them as belonging to a group. And in this example is you are an X and we are a Y, where X and Y are the same kind of groups. In other words, is two families, two sports clubs, and two nations. In summary, people acquire new identities and new languages or language varieties throughout life. It's a dynamic process. The link of language and identity are implicit in the ways in which language, culture, heritage, and history are presented as related concepts. Language has two main functions. It helps in communication and gives a group of people a sense of identity and pride. People usually identify themselves with a certain language. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Fitri. That was such a great explanation. And now let's move on into the last presenter, Sherin Bunga Permata. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Shelvi. Here I want to explain about what Professor Ms. Michael Biram said about intercultural competence and foreign language teacher. She said that read intercultural was very effective way of teaching and learning. for the purpose is an important and word with respect to what as the cultural then we talk. And here, Professor Michael Biram still talking about background information and word information rather than knowledge. And background information was done if there was time when we got this nation of intercultural communication competence. But we are not recommended to push the learners become native speakers rather than imitate, because even that was what an intercultural competence would apply. For example, according to Kate Fox's experience, who observed people doing things, she begins to analyze what rules are people following, what norms are people following. This might look to you a bit like stereotype. And what she did with his particular example is she observed people at bus stops and different places, and she analyzed grammatically these greetings. She analyzed how people greetings in bus stop in England, and most people follow the norm or rule, but you can abnormal or you say something different. So for next is communicate linguistic competence in one or more language. But the problem is there's kind of overview. Don't worry about the details, the emotion of critical cultural awareness in symbolically in the middle. So among trainee teachers, both initial service teachers about identities, behind this kind of thing, there's also a different shifting focus here, the shift from teaching the language to using the language for some other purpose and transferring some of principle of chill into the foreign language classroom and communicative language will tell this is good. Teachers moved between most of the time focusing upon content, but sometimes focusing upon on form on language to make sure the children notice certain aspects of language. Fitri, last page. Thank you. So the conclusion is the research question was something like, does the teaching of French is this case create or produce the second communication competence, but they tolerance and understanding, and the answer was not a short answer, nothing that you could actually trace, nothing he could using as it were research in instruments, measure of observed, committed idea, tolerance, and understanding boarding children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherin, for your amazing explanation. And Alhamdulillahirobbil alamin, we have explained all of the materials for this presentation. All of the presenters have explained their materials really clear and great explanation. We apologize if there was a mistake in our presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope that our presentation can give benefits for our lives in the future. Once again, thank you so much, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Goodbye.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.